us right now is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations and author of A World in Disarray, American Foreign Policy and the Crisis of the Old Order. Richard Haass is here right now. Richard, good to see you.
Good morning.
Well, you just heard some of those people in the Netherlands talking about the far-right candidate. What's your take about the election today in the Netherlands?
Always dangerous, as we've learned here, to predict elections. But if I were betting, the far-right candidate will not win. More likely to come in second or third, and even if I'm wrong, he can't form a government. The way it works there is it's proportional representation. You get 10% of the vote, you get 10% of the seats in Parliament. He doesn't have coalition partners.
Okay, so even if he were to be elected, you're saying he's going to be handicapped because he's not going to be able to put his government together.
Absolutely, but it is important, though, that he not win, because what you'd like to see here, at least I would like to see here, is a stemming of the tide towards ever greater populism.
But what about that? Because it really is taking hold across the world. Why should the U.S. care about what's going on in the Netherlands, first of all?
Well, in the Netherlands itself, this is a small country, but it matters because of the momentum in Europe. This year, you've got the big elections coming up in France this spring, Germany this fall. That's what really matters, and one doesn't want to see the momentum tip in the direction of right-wing forces in either of those countries.
Because if France, one of the larger, obviously, players there, decides we want out of the euro is dead.
Yeah, not just
it collapses.
And even more important than getting out of the euro as a currency would be what it would mean for Europe. I think most Americans don't realize that after World War II, the creation of what began as this called the coal and steel community, the whole idea was to knit together the countries of Western Europe, Germany and France in particular, so war, which had ravaged Europe twice in the 20th century, would never happen again. This has been a great peacemaking institution beyond the economics, and by the way, for all of its flaws, it's still brought a lot of prosperity to Europe.
It's a nice peacemaking situation in terms of bringing these countries together, but was the euro and the one currency a smart idea? Because there, it feels like it's been a failure. One currency, several different mentalities, depending on which country you're talking about, in terms of their approach to the economy.
Absolutely. The euro, I think, was an example of too ambitious. They got too forward on their skis. You don't have a parallel fiscal policy. You have very different kinds of economies. So the euro itself has created probably more problems than it's resolved.
Now, we should point out that Mr. Wilders in the Netherlands is saying he wants to get out of the EU. If he were to win, would he be able to actually pull the Netherlands out of the EU?
No, because, again, he couldn't put together an anti-EU government. The bigger danger would be in France if Marine Le Pen, who runs the National Front there, if she got into government, if she became the next president of France, she could take France out of the EU if she so desired, and that would be the end of post-World War II Europe as we've known it.
And those elections happen in April and May.
2 rounds, yes.
In France. So that's really the one to watch. But again, if we see this happening in the Netherlands, it's just one more sign that it could really take hold in France and Germany.
Absolutely. This is one of those dot paintings, like Seurat, and this is the latest dot, and people are going to be looking at this closely. And what people are hoping, I think, at least people like me, is that this is the peak, and we get to see the tide beginning to recede.
So what's behind all of this, Richard? We know why Donald Trump won this election. People worried about jobs. He had a jobs plan. He resonated. But is it the same situation in Europe?
Even more, it's immigration. That's what's driving things, because of the hundreds of thousands of refugees that very quickly came into to Europe. Also, years and years, even decades, of low economic growth have also hit Europe. A somewhat remote European bureaucracy, what's often called the democratic deficit. People felt that they couldn't really control their own lives. So it's all these things. And I think it's a warning for us that when people feel they can't control their futures, when their economic circumstances aren't improving, when they feel overwhelmed by globalization, they're very vulnerable to populist nationalist forces.
What's the impact on European markets? I mean, do you think if we were to see the Netherlands go far right, and then there's this speculation about France, does that impact markets? Absolutely.
That would be tremendous uncertainty. It would mean probably the unraveling of the EU as we've known it, and you would see markets plummet.
Wow. And they would plummet because it's a completely new way of doing things, and the euro would collapse.
As you know, markets hate that kind of fundamental structural uncertainty. So if the Netherlands goes badly, you'd see a bit of a hit. The real thing, though, will be France. France will be the pivot for all of Europe, and if France goes badly, it also could presage very big difficulties for Angela Merkel, who has elections this fall, whether she could maintain her hold on power.
Who, by the way, is coming to Washington this week to meet with President Trump. Let me ask you about Britain leaving the European Union, obviously, and yesterday was an important day because it was the beginning of Theresa May saying, yes, we are actually leaving. Is that right?
Before the end of this month, you will have the trigger, what's known as Article 50. The Brits will formally inform the people of the EU that they want to leave